I want to share some ways in which you can today start to practice and be more disciplined. And again, like this is, I think, a part of the spiritual journey and could be a part of your spiritual awakening. Okay, so I want to share some tips that have really helped me recently, specifically with having more discipline around my music, which I'll explain, but some things that you can start doing today to have discipline be something that is like as easy and as needed as breathing. So the first thing that has helped me so much is to identify people in my life who I would consider are really disciplined. Those people in my life usually have Capricorn in their chart somewhere. My boyfriend being one of them. He is one of the most disciplined people I know. And at first, it made me feel really insecure. It made me feel like I could be doing so much more. And in being kind of insecure in the witnessing of his deep discipline, I was not able to appreciate the example in front of me. I was so up in my head. I was like, oh my God, like, how does he do that? Like, I've never been like that. What if he finds out that I'm not as disciplined as he is? And I was unable to really appreciate and learn from him because I was so in my head. So eventually I was like, wow, that's like one of the things I love most about him. Wow, I love that about him. And that really brought me down into my heart. And I was able to appreciate and also learn from him on a day-to-day basis. For example, he will put his phone on airplane mode. He'll tell me, he'll be like, I'm going in. I'm going to put my phone in airplane mode for 3 hours and I'm going to be reading and doing some work, whatever that is for three hours. So these time blocks, I was like, wow, okay. Not on your phone for 3 hours. Sounds amazing. Not sure if I could do it. But since then, I've really created those blocks of times that are for more deep work. But having someone that, you're close to, that you admire, their discipline, and being able to express that to them. I've told him so many times, I just respect you so much for the discipline you have around fill in the blank. And this really allows the conversation to happen and the support to be there. So I've even said, like, I really am working on being more disciplined. So the fact that he knows that that is something I am working on, he becomes like my accountability partner. And there have been times where he said to me, like, hey, I know you said you were planning on working on music. Like, how's that going? Like, you are so right. Here I go, accountability partner. So although it can be very like such a mirror at times, I highly recommend having a web of people that you weave around you in the most loving way, that you can lean on, that you can observe, that you can learn from, because you really respect their process, you respect their relationship with discipline. And I promise you, in those moments where you're like, how do I do this? How do I be more disciplined in this moment? If you think about that person and you say, okay, I'm going to embody fill in the blank, it will work. I always say, like, okay, what would Sean do in this moment? And it truly works. Another thing that I've done to just set myself up for a more disciplined flow is setting up systems. So what's really cool, I feel really lucky that I don't necessarily have to, quote unquote, work on weekends. Do I? Yes. But I do have a bit more flexibility and just freedom and time. And so what I've done with my music is I have a block of time on Saturdays where I will turn off my phone and just go into deep work. So usually it's from 10 to 2. And I block off each hour as a different focus within what I'm trying to learn or produce within that time. So the first hour, for example, is for figuring out some technical shit that I'm really bad at. It's something that I don't like to do, so I get it out of the way. That's the first hour. I will fully immerse myself, for example, in learning how to integrate new instruments into a Pro Tools project. And so I really get deep in it. I'll YouTube, I'll just make sure I'm getting as much information as possible, and then I'll practice it. So I'm like, okay, once I kind of know how to troubleshoot, then I'll practice setting up the session using what I've learned. Just an example, but and then the second hour I'll play. I'll kind of rip, with no pressure to produce anything. I just want to play and hear different sounds and maybe play with my voice and different manipulations and just really like have fun. And in doing so, within this structure of discipline, I add play. So if you think of like, those little Russian dolls that like pop out of one another. So the big one is the discipline. Then the next one I have like a layer of play. And within that, I'm able to discover something that I would have never discovered if I hadn't played and if I hadn't had the discipline. So I discover a new sound or a new beat, or I create a new melody. And all thanks to this structure, this, block of time that I've set aside and committed to and unplugged for. And I've discovered this whole new thing, this new melody that I can play with and that really lights me up. So I always associated discipline as like boring, restrictive, doesn't allow me to be creative, blah, blah, blah. But what I'm discovering is that discipline is actually the structure you need in order to feel more free and more creative. And it's like 100 million light bulbs are going off in my head. Like, oh my God, I wish I would have done this sooner. Wow. Never, ever, ever too late. Ever. That's the truth. And also, the other thing I'll say about the play is that think of your discipline as like this safe space for your talent and your gifts to come out and play. Because if you don't have a structure and like kind of a comfy playroom for them to play in, they might feel a little vulnerable, or it might just feel disconnected. So I've just found that like, wow, discipline is actually that really warm, protected, safe space for my talent to just play and become more fully embodied. And it's just been so cool to discover.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Morning Microdose by Almost 30.
We hope you enjoyed waking up.
As always, we encourage you to take what resonates and leave the rest. If you enjoyed this trip, tune into the full episode on the Almost 30 podcast. All episode information can be found in the show notes.
Make sure to subscribe, and if this becomes a part of your morning routine, be sure to share it with a friend. We have new inspiring doses Monday through Friday. Follow us on Instagram at Morning Microdose, and follow Almost 30 at Almost 30 Podcast.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the vortex.